Hello, everybody. This is Philip Martin, and this is On Film, on video for September 3rd, 2021. This is my third attempt at doing this video. I actually have one done, which is the first cut, but I don't think I like it. And I'm going to do it again because I can. I mean, and movies are done that way. You know, movies actors get a chance to do it over and over until they get it right. Generally, what we do here is we do it once. And we don't do it right, and we just put it out there because there's a limited amount of time I want to spend on this because time is precious to me, and I could be out riding my bicycle if I wasn't doing this. But anyway, what started me thinking about this was that, you know, I really think we have arrived at where we're going to be for a while. I don't want to call it a new normal because I think normal always changes. But I think we're at a place now where people are willing to go to a movie theater and see a movie if it's a movie they're willing to go see. Some movies are going to draw people into theaters. Some movies are not. And that's kind of a shame in that we're losing touch with that old experience that we had and our grandparents had and maybe their grandparents before them had of going to this theater and having this civic ritual, you know, communing with the thing on the screen, the lights and the sound, and being with strangers in the dark at an appointed time, and no one has a clicker where they can pause it, back it up, put the subtitles on, or anything like that. You know, it's sort of like, it's an appointment, you go, you do it, and we all go together. It's civic ritual. It's important. And I think that's one of the things that the pandemic has done is sort of like broken down all these civic rituals, and we don't, you know, see each other anymore. We're not rubbing shoulders as strangers. I felt that way when I went to the Jason Isbell, Lucinda Williams concert a couple weeks ago. That, hey, it was just great to be out here with people I don't know, people outside my pod, you know. But it is, as they say, what it is. And I think what we're going to do now is that some of us are going to go see the movies when we want to go see the movies, and most of the time we're going to stay at home and we're going to wait for the movies to come to us. And I have mixed feelings about that because I think some movies are perfectly fine to consume at home, and one of the things I really like to do is to sit in my couch with my lovely wife and my animals and watch a movie. And then we can watch the movie and we can pause it. We can get up and get something to eat. We can, you know, save it for later if we want to. We can move on. All the things you can do with home video, which are wonderful. They're wonderful. And I was thinking, most people are now living like movie critics too. Because movie critics, by and large, I mean, if you live in Philadelphia, New York, Los Angeles, then you go to screenings. Then you go and sit in the dark with a bunch of other movie critics and watch the thing on the screen and hear the noise and all that. But if you're like me and most of the people that actually do this for a living, what you do nowadays is you pick up your iPad and you watch. Okay, let's get started here. This violates some copyright, you know. See, we watched this. Okay, is that not even moving? Yeah. See. All right, that's enough. That's enough. I don't want to get in trouble. But that's how we see most of our movies now. We watch them on things like this or on computer screens or, God help us, our phones or whatever. Because the way it used to be, like I say, go back to the 80s, the 90s, when I started doing this, the way a critic would see a movie was to go to a screening, which was typically held maybe 10 days. It seems to me like a lot of them were held on Tuesday and Wednesday night, the week before the movie opens. So it would be opening not that Friday, but the next Friday, which would give you plenty of time to think about it and write about it. But you'd go on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night, you'd see the movie, and sometimes there'd be a crowd, and sometimes there wouldn't. Sometimes it would just be an invited few people, critics, and, you know, plus ones. And other times, usually when there was a comedy or something like that, it would be a full theater and they would have the seats reserved for the critics. Now that really doesn't happen here. It stopped about 7 or 8 years ago because the studios started contracting, you know, like everything around 2008. God, 2008 was not 7 8 years ago. 2008 was 13 years ago. That seems impossible. But anyway, that's when it started to change. And it's like, and we have fewer and fewer screenings. We may have one or two a year, and most of those I don't know about because I'm out of the loop, I guess. I mean, it's sort of like it used to be. We had publicists call us up and tell us there was going to be a radio station screening. The radio station was handing out free tickets. Remember that? Remember when you could call up and get free tickets to a show, to a preview? Well, that was for the critics. So, well, not really, but that was one of the reasons. So the critics could see the movie in advance, and we could write about it or talk about it on the TV or on the radio or whatever. Now they don't do that, at least not in our size markets, our tertiary markets like Little Rock and Fayetteville. We don't have screenings, which is a real bummer for people like Courtney Lanning who really want to know what it's like to be a film critic. And Courtney, I'm sorry, those days are gone. And I missed out on the days, like in the 70s, where they would fly you over to London to sit on the set of Barry Lyndon for a week and talk to Ryan O'Neal in between takes. You know, I mean, it just changes. It's not the same as it was because it's always moving in one direction or the other. And I'm really kind of glad that it's not like it was in the 80s and 90s, because most of the films that we saw, we didn't see in screenings like that, but we saw in screenings in LA and New York on something that was called a junket, and they still have them, and mostly they're for bloggers now. I don't think there are too many newspaper people who go on these things anymore. There might be some, but most newspapers, number one, have discontinued their film criticism. They don't carry a critic on their roster anymore. We're kind of weird in that I still do it, and we have other people who do it, and, you know, but most places don't. I mean, who's the film critic in Atlanta? There is none. It used to be Roger Ebert. That was the joke. But, we don't do that. That's something that newspapers got rid of, gave up. They gave up their art criticism, which was a shame. We haven't, but it was a shame. But going to a junket was surreal because you'd get up, basically, you'd fly you out. Let's just take one. You'd fly to LA, okay. And West Coast is, of course, 3 hours earlier than here. I think that's right because it's 2 hours earlier. Okay, we have the, Pacific time, we have the Monkey time, and we're in Central time, so it's like 2 hours earlier. So you could leave at like 3 o'clock and get there about 5 o'clock. Usually you'd leave here about noon or 1 o'clock and get there about 2 or 3 o'clock, and you'd have a screening that night at a big theater, and you almost always had to go to the hotel first because there was a hotel that was designated for the junket hotel. Usually, or often it was the Four Seasons Beverly Hills, which really isn't in Beverly Hills. It's across the street from Beverly Hills. It's in West Hollywood. But it's really well located, too, because you're right there by Cedars-Sinai Hospital, and you can go down the street a little bit, and there's the mall where Winona Ryder got arrested for shoplifting. Okay, and then you go west, and you're in Beverly Hills, which movie stars, swimming pools, stuff like that, and it's a really nice place to stay. And I probably have stayed there 100 nights. Certainly between myself and my wife Karen, who really liked the Four Seasons, we stayed there 100 nights. Maybe longer than that. Long enough that they actually knew who we were. I mean, they greeted us by name when we walked up. So that was kind of cool. That was kind of the cool part because you're staying in a nice hotel. Kind of the bad part is you get there and you generally have a screening that starts around 7 o'clock. You get there maybe 3:30 in the afternoon at LAX, and you got to get from LAX to Beverly Hills, which is a $40 cab ride, or it was then, or you could get on Super Shuttle and take 2 hours to get there and get there at 5. It's not optimal. And then you had to get on the bus. Generally, I didn't. Often I would walk if the theater was within walking distance, which it would have been if it was one theater, but wouldn't have been if it was up in Hollywood at Grauman's or one of the on the Sunset Strip or someplace like that. So you get there and then you check into the hotel and you wash up, clean up, and then you would get on the bus and you would meet your colleagues, your cohort, your ilk. I don't really, there's really not a nice way to say this, but the entertainment press in this country, there's some very good people who work in it. There's some very good film critics, and there's some very good entertainment writers. Most of them are not on this bus. This is the short bus, the bad bus, the bus with the bloggers and the, people who just are kind of living on this junket circuit where they're living off the studio dime and they're going around every week and getting their dry cleaning done at the hotel because, you get a per diem. It's funny the way it worked because you could do this thing where your newspaper would pay for it, or your newspaper could pay part of it, or the studio would just pick it up. Just pick it all up and give you a $50 a day per diem to spend in the restaurants there, or whatever, And you could turn in expense forms to the studio. And if you were unscrupulous, which I know some of you were, I mean, some of you, if anybody in the ilk is out there watching, some of you did this, you could turn in the expense sheets both to your employer and to the studio, and you get double dip on it, Cab fare. Yeah, and the cab fare thing was great. The cabbie would generally not give you a receipt. He would give you a card, and you're supposed to fill out the amount on there. And he would give you 3 cards. It was like, okay, tip me well. I will give you as many cards as you want so you can write these things down and turn them in as receipts. I never did that. In fact, I discontinued the junketing practice when I sort of took over. Not that I had much of an opportunity to keep it going, but it's sort of like I'm not listening to offers to send our people on junkets anymore. The freelancers that work with us, if they end up going on one, that's their business. That's totally them. They're independent contractors. They can do what they will. I know Piers sometimes goes down to some in Philadelphia, but he's walking there. He's not, he's not on scholarship. Anyway, and then you would go and you would sit for an hour because you'd go get on the bus at 6 or 5:30, go to the theater, load into the theater, and you walk in the theater and you've got they give you little vouchers for your popcorn and your Coke. You get a popcorn and a Coke, and I would typically give mine away if there was a crowd of people there, actual civilians waiting to get in. I would often give mine because I don't eat in movie theaters. I just don't. I haven't since I saw Red Sky at Morning in 1971, and somebody had some really heavy buttered popcorn, and I can still smell it. And I just don't feel like eating in movie theaters, so I don't. So I used to give my Coke and my popcorn to some kid, here, tell him you're the world's youngest movie critic, and just give him this, it's like and they give you free popcorn, free Coke. So anyway, you go in there and you sit in the designated section, which are the best seats in the house, which was always also kind of bad because you march in past all these people who are lined up to wait to see the movie, which it's just like it would be here. It's a preview audience. Most of them probably got these tickets for free or because they knew somebody or whatever. But anyway, I felt bad walking in past them and getting in the best seats. And then you watch the movie, or maybe you watch 2 movies, which was always great because you'd watch one back to back, and you'd have the attendant delays between the films, and so it'd kind of be a long night. Sometimes you'd get out of there at 10:30, 11:30, and then you go back to the room, and I would typically get room service. Karen used to go down to the Ralphs right down the road from the Beverly Hills Hotel and get a banana. She get a banana. She get ham and butter sandwich, something like that. But I would get room service. So because it's late, but it's not late for me really. I mean, it's sort of like it's 2 hours earlier on my time. And you get up in the morning, and you'd have up till about 10 o'clock You'd have free time, so you'd go run around Beverly Hills. I used to run through Beverly Hills. I used to do all this stuff. Then you'd come back, and then you would have the round table interviews, which were the worst. I've talked about these in my columns before, so it's not talking out of school. But they're absolutely worthless, at least for someone like me, who's only really there to see the movie. Now, part of the sort of tacit agreement between you and the studio, or you and your publicist, is that you will write a feature story, a story off of what you find out at the junket. And I always did, because often I would put in and get a one-on-one interview with a director or a writer or something like that. And those were usually often our cinematographer, often really good, because it's really good to talk to people who aren't professional interviewees, like actors can be. I mean, actors, God bless them, they're all a lot smarter than you think they are. And they know how to win your empathy, because that's their job. And they will charm you to death and tell you nothing. And they'll tell you exactly what they want. You'll think you got this great quote, and you'll see that he's told it to 15 other different people. And mainly he told it to the 6 other journalists who were in the room with you. So, those things were worthless. Really worthless. But, I still managed to get something out of most of them most of the time. Plus, I got the reviews. So it was worth it. And then sometimes when I would have a one-on-one interview, those were really turned out to be, I really liked those. Those were really, that's the one thing I miss. If I ever started to go back and do that again, I would stipulate, I don't want to go to the round tables, which is with the other journalists talking in a room for 15 minutes. I want to have a one-on-one. If I can't have a one-on-one, I'm not doing it. That's my policy. Maybe that's why they don't invite me anymore. I don't know. And even in the last few years I did it, it even got worse, because they stopped doing that. They started having a press conference, which is exactly what you imagine. You have 50 journalists, 100 journalists in a room, a podium, somebody with microphones in the air, and people raising their hand. What color is your favorite? Yeah, it's just terrible. It's terrible, 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 terrible. The one good one, which wasn't that great, I wish I had taken better notes, or I wish that we had the technology we had now, and I had actually recorded it, because I was there in 2000 when at the Pearl Harbor thing, when Ben Affleck showed up a little bit inebriated, I believe. Maybe not, but he went to rehab right after. So, but Affleck was kind of fun. And these guys really, sometimes these things are fun, but they're not useful. Ever. Plus, you get to rub shoulders with the Hollywood Foreign Press, which is never a good thing. Never a good thing. Unless they have their own event where you get excluded from, and and Tom Hanks signs autographs for them. I don't, it's just crazy. Someday I have written about that. I have written about the junket experience, and about how, kind of bad that is. And so we did that. And that's, I don't want to do it anymore. I'm happy to get these things the way we get them on the screen. But it's not the same as seeing the movie in a theater, obviously. I can take this downstairs to my TV, and I can throw it up on the TV, as most of you technologically savvy people can. I can do that. It's still not the same thing as watching in a theater. Of course, when you're watching in a theater and you're the only person, or there's like 6 critics there, it's not the same thing as watching with an audience either. And as I've often said, nobody ever sees the same movie twice, because it's always mixed differently in your head. Depends on what's going on with you. And you're the ultimate collaborator. You're the last person to touch that. So, it really doesn't matter how you see it. Everybody's experience is going to be different. What a critic can do is say something interesting about the movie, not good, bad, awful, not worth it, hated it, whatever. That's fine, but the verdict's the least important and least interesting part of any review to me. Okay, underline that, put it away. That's my philosophy. Say something interesting about the movie that might be true. That's all you got to do. That's the whole thing. You just skip journalism school. Come to my seminar on film criticism. It's my TED talk. Anyway, this week, I didn't see Shang-Chi. I hear it's good, and we do have Piers Marchant who's writing about it, and all you Marvel Universe people should be happy because he's into that. I famously am not into that, and that's okay. It really is okay not to be into that. But it sounds good. It sounds really good. Cinderella on Netflix and in theaters. Hey, so you do have a chance to go to see the theaters. This great little movie called The Gateway is on VOD, and it's on DVD Tuesday. Shea Wiggum, who I really like as an actor, he's in it. It's great. It would have been, a few years ago, it would have been a nice sleeper counter programming to the big Marvel thing. But, I guess they figured out that it's more economically efficient to do it this way. I don't know. But there's plenty of stuff to see, plenty of things to do. But going forward, it's always going to be changing. It's always different. We are in a normal situation now. I think. I also think it's going to change. But I think this is the way it's going to be for a while. We're going to have films that some people are going to want to go see and want to go see them on the big screen. And if you take the right precautions and do the right thing, you can do that. But there's going to be an awful lot of these things that are going to VOD or going to Netflix or going to Amazon Prime. And that's great. That's great. I just wish, I just wish we had a way of maintaining that civic tradition, that cultural practice of going to the movies. Maybe it'll continue. Maybe people will go, instead of going to movies 10 times a year, they might go 3 times a year or something like that. And I hope theaters can weather the storm too. I really do appreciate our local theaters, and everybody should try to support them just like they do all the artists. But the distribution models are going to go the way distribution models are going to go. They're going to maximize profits for the venture capitalists who put these consumer projects out there. These are all business ventures. They're going to figure out the best way to make them return profits. And if that means put them on Netflix or whatever, it'll be really interesting to see where the lawsuit that Scarlett Johansson has filed against Disney for the treatment of Black Widow goes. Though Black Widow apparently made a whole lot of money on the Disney Plus side. Now, what that means, I don't know, because it's sort of like Scarlett's contract may not have taken that into account. Maybe she doesn't get paid as much for that, or she doesn't get as big a slice of that revenue as she does of the theatrical revenue. I haven't really looked at it. All I know is that she was disappointed that it went to Disney Plus. And it's Cruella de Vil, Cruella, I guess. I guess Emma Stone. I hope, yeah, Emma Stone, because there's also Emma Roberts. Which Emma? Emma Stone, yeah, is contemplating doing the same thing. So we're going to see how it's going to shake out. But my advice is do what you do, take care of yourself, and see me here next week, and we'll talk more about the movies without a script, but not without a plan. Take care.